To our webinar, Simplified Licensing for Architects and Engineers. My name is Anu Shah and I will be your moderator. Joining us today is Brian Bartnicki and Dan Obald. Since the inception of Corporation Service Company, CSC, licensing services, Brian has been at the forefront assisting customers with their industry-specific requirements, which range from research, portfolio management, and renewal services. Dan is a business license engineer at CSC and has been with the company since 2012. He consults with customers on their current license portfolios and works with them to ensure easier compliance and greater efficiency. And with that, let's welcome Brian and Dan.
Thank you, Anu, and to all of you on the line. We appreciate your time this afternoon. As Anu mentioned, we're going to talk about helping you manage your architect and engineer licenses, along with some fun facts and knowledge about the industry, and we really look forward to helping you out. Before we go into that, I want to talk about what we're going, sort of the agenda for this afternoon. Briefly talk about CSC. We're going to go into the consequences of noncompliance, who needs to comply, the types of licenses, challenges, how CSC can help, a very brief demonstration, and then we're going to end with a question and answer session. So about CSC, we've been in business for over 115 years, 1899, multiple centuries and multiple millenniums too, which is really neat. We have offices all across the world, and we employ over 2,000 people currently. We're a SOC 2 compliant company, which is a security standard. We're very proud of that, very unique in the marketplace. And we service, in some capacity, 90% of the Fortune 500, and the average tenure of our service organization is 10.5 years. Before I kick it off
and thank you, Brian. So when we have a lot of customers coming to us and researching or working with their licensing compliance, a lot of customers come to us and say, well, why should I be concerned? What is the issue? What if I don't follow along with them? And as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, when it comes to licensing and these registrations, these are laws, ordinances governed by a city, a county, a state statute that are required of businesses to maintain and renew year over year as they come to expire. Now, unfortunately, for a lot of our customers, CSC comes into play post some sort of a consequence. And for a lot of our customers, we see a couple different things happening. And as we saw in the slide there, or in that poll question, one of the items could be fines and penalties, where it's pretty frequent that we'll see fines and penalties come about. Now, these can be ranged from a varying different means. It could be a single flat fee associated with the duration, $10, a couple $100, anything to a percentage of the required renewal fee, compounded monthly, and the list really goes on. And it's important to notate that with these fines and penalties, it's not a blanket statement of how much it's going to be should you fall into these issues. Most of these jurisdictions are going to have their own requirements, their own set of consequences should you not obtain or fail to renew a license. Now, fines and penalties is usually the primary one that we see from customers, but what a lot of people don't think about is the damage to the firm's reputation. Now, we worked with customers in the past that have indicated to us that not having a license is detrimental to their reputation within the market, where they may have to bid on a job and then thereafter are unable to start that job because they didn't have a license. And they've indicated to us that in some instances they're not selected because of their reputation for being out of compliance and the potential of further issues resulting from that. Of course, a big one as a result of that could be lawsuits, where your client, if not having a license, delays a project, could result in those lawsuits and could be fined or have a lawsuit from that specific jurisdiction. Now, most importantly, what a lot of our customers have on the forefront of their mind is the idea of loss of revenue for you and your client. Now, as we mentioned, the delay of not having a license could substantially impact your specific job, your direct revenue, but also the client who is responsible or has that project underway. The expectation or the start date could then be delayed as well, costing them revenue. And lastly, what a lot of people don't think about is the idea of arrest. I can't tell you how many stories we work with customers where an individual was put into handcuffs and taken away because they were the ones listed as responsible for those licenses. And again, it's a wide variety of different things that can happen, but it's going to be jurisdiction specific and license specific. So a lot of you may be asking, well, who needs to comply? Unfortunately, when it comes to licensing, the laws and registrations could vary, drastically here, and usually it's irrelevant of size of a company. It could be anywhere from small companies to the mid-size to large companies and the big Fortune 500, 100 customers that you know inside your house. The number of jurisdictions is as the majority said. We work with about 160,000 different issuing offices or jurisdictions in the United States.
And that really brings us to our next slide, which is going to dive into the types of licenses. Now, in the industry, I'm sure many of you are aware, if this falls under your umbrella of responsibility, you may see where your jobs are located, city and county requirements, permits, but there are unique, in the industry, there are unique licenses that you could have. Maybe you'll see, for example, a certificate of authorization. You may see a firm registration. You could see a design firm registration, maybe your professional license, a surveyor or land surveyor, an architecture license, a landscape architect license, and in some cases even interior design. And this is truly going to be based on not just where you're doing business, but the activity in which you're doing it. So Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but just as an example, if you have a company vehicle that's doing business in a particular city or crosses into unincorporated versus an incorporated area, that could constitute a unique requirement at the local level. And then based on the activity within the professional firm, you could have some of these licenses that would be needed. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. You know, the ones that we have listed here are mostly specific to this industry-specific licenses, if you will, and a majority of them issued at a state level, a state department. But as you mentioned, even things minute as crossing into a different city or county to conduct business could populate other requirements that you're not aware of. Now, we do look at and talk a lot about industry-specific licenses, specifically to what you're doing, but it's also important to notate that there are other licenses out there that may be applicable, the general licenses. And these are usually ones that a lot of people don't think about, and they usually come about based off of, again, the city, the county, or where you're doing that business. One of the best examples I like to give customers is Carlsbad, California, where on their website they do indicate that anything from entering the jurisdiction to delivering a package or having a physical presence could populate a licensing requirement. So for some customers that just enter to consult with a different individual in that specific location, a licensing requirement may exist. So when we look at this industry, of course we want to look at those industry-specific ones that you mentioned, but of course those general ones as well that may be applicable to all businesses. Now, there's also other ones to think about. It's third-party organization registrations that many of our listeners here today may be familiar with. NCARB registration, NCEES, NCIDQ, and CLAR. Definitely some that we can assist with as well. And it's important to notate we're talking a lot about the business, but the individual. So those individuals may have additional requirements outside the entity, and that a lot of our customers need to keep on it or on top of as well to ensure that compliance.
So the next thing that we're going to dive into are going to be some of the basic challenges that we're going to find in the market. Obviously, in your office you have your own responsibilities, and especially if you're in multiple states or you have multiple people in the field, one of the challenges you're going to find regarding licensing is going to fall under a model of decentralization. If you do have a centralized method right now and you're going ahead and tracking it, we'll get into those items down the line. But really, most commonly, we do find a decentralized market in this industry when it comes to licensing. There's really no transparency. A lot of times, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that individuals have kept up, perhaps, with their continual education. You don't know if you have a specific city or a professional license that's coming for renewal. There's no way of knowing or really collaborating all that data in one place, especially at multiple locations.
And this is really important for a lot of our customers, and especially in that corporate headquarters where they're responsible for those day-to-day activities, ensuring that that company is running smoothly. Again, these registrations are part of the law, ordinances, state statutes, and for some of our customers that we discuss with specifically, we see that decentralized model where individual offices may be required, but that corporate office doesn't have that transparency to have that peace of mind to know, hey, everything's being handled, they are staying on top of their licenses, And it makes it very difficult for them in some instances to, again, have that peace of mind and have that transparency into these legal registrations.
So when it comes to, what is required, research is a big thing that we hear pretty frequently. I will hear, does every state require that our entity has a license? Does my firm need to be licensed in each location? We're really only bidding on a job. We're only going to be talking to a client. We're only going to have someone there for 2 weeks. Does this constitute me needing a license? And to Dan's point too, and we were sort of chatting about, there are different localities that you could require a license. I use Pennsylvania as an example. I always think it's, and I'm from Pennsylvania, so I can make fun of it. The fact is that there's so many townships and so many boroughs and so many school districts and all these little itty-bitty villages that there's a different jurisdictions, and believe it or not, everyone wants their own cut of something, and something that you might have a ridiculous, small city requirement beyond your firm registration, and knowing what that is and spending the time and trying to get in touch with somebody there is quite a challenge. And then the time, again, we're all busy, right? I mean, how much time are you really going to be able to spend in doing this?
And when we look at researching, and as Brian mentioned, there's a lot of different jurisdictions out there that may govern. When we talk about customers and they come to us and say, where should we be researching? What locations should we be looking into? And there's a couple different things that we look into for customers. First and foremost will be a physical fixed place of business. Where is an address that you call your own? Whether you own that location or you're leasing it, where do you have that footprint on the ground? Now, the other area that's specific, and we see more in these industries, are where you're going to, or what I like to refer to as service locations. It might not be your physical office or your physical location, rather where you're going to provide that service. A client's location, maybe to a job site specifically. Now, as I mentioned earlier with that example out in California, just entering into that new jurisdiction could populate requirements. Now, as we work down the list here a little bit further, other customers we work with or look into is, where's your property going? Where do you have other registrations? So, primarily a lot of customers focus on that physical location, but it's important to look at those other levels as well and do your due diligence. Because a lot of times we see with customers is the fines that come thereafter for not knowing, that could have covered them to just take a couple extra hours out of their day or work with an organization like CSC to ensure that they're covered.
Now, after research is done, filing is just going to be step 2. So what form do I need to file? Once I know who governs it, what are the applications I need, if any? Where do I file them? Is it a board? Is it with the Board of Architecture, Board of Engineering? Or really, where do I need to send this? Is it a county? Is it a Department of Taxation? Where do I need to actually do this? And then what are the filing costs? Sometimes you'll see that a filing cost could be off of the value of a project or the revenue that you're going to generate, or it might just be a flat fee. It's so variable that it's difficult to know, what it's going to cost. And then, has my filing been approved? I know personally that I have, in past duties here at CSC, I have tried to follow up on filings for licenses for customers, and it's very, very difficult trying to get in touch with somebody in a government office who works Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they only work from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, and they take a lunch hour, and there's only one of two people that are physically in the office. So I'm pulling my hair out trying to get approval. We have a job that breaking ground is going to start, and I need my physical evidence for us to physically start the work. My firm has a license, but maybe I need a city license. Or sometimes if you put an application to the board, the approval process could take a whole quarter. They might meet only once a quarter.
That's, you highlight some very big challenges that our customers are running into. Filings is one thing. I can submit that application, but it's that burden of follow-up or burden of proof that this has been issued, where just simply sending that into the jurisdiction may not suffice. Again, working with customers in past experience, we've sent this to the jurisdiction, we thought it was approved, but what we can suggest to a lot of you is make that constant follow-up. check in. After you've submitted it, ensure that they have it and it's moving forward. Because they really put the responsibility of that filing and licensing on that license holder. You know, I would love to say every jurisdiction is there to help you, but it seems more and more they're only there to help you if you have a fine to pay.
So once you have filings completed, now we're in the spot of renewal. So how do you manage renewals? And going back to the beginning, we talked about challenges of decentralization. You know, how do you know when an authority requires it to be renewed? Sometimes customers may wait for an email notification, or they might wait for a mailer to come. But if it doesn't come to you, or if, you know, it gets misplaced, you know, sometimes mail might not go out. Maybe a jurisdiction may not send it. So manually tracking it, using a spreadsheet or some type of database that you have, you know, how do you track when these are coming due? And as you know, in the industry, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but whether it's the individual or the firm itself, you're going to find that the renewal date could be variable to fiscal year end. It could be the anniversary date of you doing business in that state, or it could even be the birthday of the individual engineer or architect, right?
You know, they definitely don't make it easy. You know, again, as we mentioned, there's over 160,000 different jurisdictions, and each one of those may issue multiple licenses that have different expiration dates. You know, in a perfect world, everything would expire December 31st, but maybe for customers with a lot of licenses, processing a couple thousand licenses at the end of the year may not work either. So when we look at renewals, it's really something that a lot of our customers aren't focused on. You know, our customers look to run their business, as they should, growing that business, gaining new revenue, and something that may come up once a year, every 2 years, or random times throughout the year, may be hard to keep track of. I mean, I can tell you I've forgotten people's birthdays in the past, and that happens once a year. So, you know, this
You forgot mine, by the way.
I know. I do apologize for that. I'll get you that gift. Don't worry. So it's definitely something that is easily forgotten. And if you have that responsibility to renew that license, what if you're out that day and you don't get that reminder, and now that's fallen past due? So, you know, it's something that in theory sounds really easy, but if you're so focused on doing your job well and growing that business, it's very easy to overlook. So we talk about a lot of these challenges, not only fines or issues with consequences associated with not having a license or renewals, but a lot of things have to go into place. Researching licensing requirements, new filings, renewals, amendments. You know, there's a lot of things to keep up with, and a lot of things our customers just don't have the time to do. And that administrative burden isn't really what they want to do because they're focused on moving that business forward. And so that's where CSC really comes into play for our customers, where essentially we have the ability, very flexible, to work with you for whatever you may need from those different categories I spoke of, from that research to the filings, amendments, or even closing out a business. We're here to take that administrative burden off of your plate and to assist you with really understanding and tracking those licensing requirements. Now, as we talked about, that could be, again, as we have listed here, anything from researching those requirements. You know, when we look at research, it's really location specific. A city, a county, am I in the city limits, the unincorporated area of the county? What are my state requirements? Is this license required once per location, once per entity? You know, there's a lot of different moving parts that we want to take into consideration that maybe you just don't have the resources to do in-house. And we can assist you with that research or understanding what needs to be filed in the event that there's a change. We talked about the address changes or maybe a name change, or now you have a DBA name that you're operating under. When it comes to filing amendments, just like with filing new licenses, a couple of different things could happen. There could be a specific amendment form, a letter on company letterhead with proof signed by an owner officer, a simple phone call. Nothing can happen altogether. So a lot of our customers have questions about those specific licenses and how to go about things that CSC can help you with.
And just to piggyback off what Dan said, we're looking at new business, existing business, acquired business. From a research perspective, we do have a service, we call it a business license research package, where you would tell us, you could complete a questionnaire, which is about a page and a half, and then our team is going to provide all the results that are needed in that specific jurisdiction from the city, county, state level townships, whatever is going to be applicable based on that particular jurisdiction where the business activity is being conducted for that specific job. From an existing business perspective, we have something called an audit and gap analysis, which is going to be if you have an existing portfolio of licenses, you would send us that data, and we in turn would tell you three things. We're going to tell you what you have, the status of your existing licenses. We're going to tell you what you don't have, what you filed that's unnecessary, what's missing, and then what you have but you don't need, what you filed that's unnecessary. Okay, so it's going to tell you those specific three things. Now, for acquiring businesses, if you do buy a firm and you need to amend the address, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes they could have different processes and places to do that change.
Correct. So, we see a lot of customer acquisitions and mergers with the business that we're in. So a lot of times it's not just as simple as just amending that license. Sometimes you might have to go through that new process altogether. A lot of times those business or entity licenses are really rooted to the FEIN. So if that new business comes into play, it's a new FEIN, there could be that potential of applying for a new license altogether. But to ensure that we go about this properly and we don't get any rejections or delays in the job, we have that research product out there for our customers so they can clearly understand what the process is. What do I need to submit? Who do I need to send it to, and the fees associated with it. Now, the other thing when we look at existing businesses and what some of our customers do is what's known as our forensic research, where we can essentially take your location, take those activities and that name of that specific business operating there, and uncover what's already existing. Now, a lot of customers will come and do that due diligence prior to buying a business because there may be issues thereafter after that goes through. Now, there's a certain instance we're working through right now where a customer has a very hefty fine now associated with the business that they bought. Since it's theirs, it's their fine to pay. And there's several zeros attached with that fine, Brian, and that's to say the least. So it's another one of those things when we talk about licensing, due diligence and doing your homework is always better than being reactive to a fine or an issue.
And from after research, from a filing perspective, as we mentioned, our team can prepare the licenses. After we help you with research, we can help you physically file the renewals or any other types of registrations.
And what we see from a lot of customers, we're talking about new filings, we're talking about renewals. And in some instances, there may be that reciprocity idea, where I have a license in California, but they're reciprocal with other states that make that process a little bit easier. So I don't have to go through the whole new application process. It's a lighter form to file. So it's something else that we look into for our customers, not just new filings, but can we go through an idea of reciprocity if the correct items are in place. And so other filings associated with that we covered here, again, those NCARB filings, NCES, NCIDQ, CLARB, those other membership organizations that you may be a part of to renew those registrations year over year, firm licenses, supportive filings for amendments, or even just those general business licenses that a lot of customers don't think about.
Now, on the side of tracking, once we have all these, and really what the next step is how are you tracking it? And we'll get into showing you how we can help in that space. But a lot of times it's difficult for customers, again, with the transparency and the manual tracking to go through this. And there's just so many moving parts to your portfolio that we really want to help, if possible, to ease that away from you.
And tracking for our customers is a big thing because over the years being in this business for so long, what we're starting to see is a lot of jurisdictions tapering off, sending out notices or reminders, and really putting that renewal responsibility on that license holder. So it's important to understand when those expiration dates are and when things are coming due, because jurisdictions are looking for ways to save money. If they don't have to send out mailings to 60,000 different license holders, that's some savings they can cut off their budget. Really, they'll only reach out to you in the event that you owe them additional money in the form of a fine. So that's where CSC comes into play, where we can fulfill that role for you as an extension of your licensing department and taking that administrative burden off your plate. Again, we can assist our customers with anything from researching your licensing requirements at an initial or a new location before you move there, to uncovering what's existing, how to amend a license, the new filings, renewals, throughout the entire life cycle of a license, we're here to be flexible and fluid with our customers to take or alleviate some of the pains that they're feeling. So we have ways to help you get organized, and that's what we need to do for a lot of customers. File getting corrupt and they lose all that information. So, there's definitely pros and cons associated with every way, and hopefully we can provide you some efficiencies associated with that through the different products and services that we offer.
So what we're going to do very quickly is I'm going to show you how CSC and our cloud-based existing, if you're a customer of ours, this is not software. It's just a feature that we turn on within your account. It's easy implementation. It could be any size, small, medium, large company. It's all online. There's no software, again, or any IT involvement. You can have unlimited amount of users. We do not charge for users. We do not charge for training and support. It's completely customizable, and it's honestly turnkey. You send us your data. If you have an existing software out there, you would just send us the data dump. If you have the Excel, you send us the Excel chart, or if you have any other format, we'll review it and we can put it in here. But what I'm going to do is show you where you would view your licenses and how they would be managed on your CSC account. So I'm going to share. You can be anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. It's going to centralize everything, get rid of that decentralization. It's ultimately going to prevent you from missing penalties and fines, whether we're doing the renewals for you or whether you're managing it. And it's going to be doing that by monitoring the expiration and the alerts, and it's going to really provide a nice, clean, centralized, cloud-based system for you to see. So with that, thank you for attending. We'll open it up for questions. We really appreciate everyone's time this afternoon.
Thank you, Brian and Dan. That was great. We will now open up the Q&A session. Also on the screen, we have one last question for you. Would you like to be contacted with more information about CSC's research, filing, or renewal services? Please click one of the options on your screen if you're interested in learning more about the service. And also, just as a reminder, you can download a copy of today's materials from the handouts box. And if you'd like to see what other webinars CSC offers, click on the free education webinars link in the Join Us for More box. So now let's open it up for Q&A. Thank you. So folks, we're going to give you about 10 minutes back. That is all the time we have. If we didn't get to your question, we will contact you with a response after the webinar. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope to see you next time.